Here's how I lost 15 pounds without dieting or counting calories. This is life-changing information because I was someone who dieted my whole life, had a whole lot of issues from dieting and restricting food, and it inevitably caused my body to put on 15 pounds. So let's get into exactly what I did and how you can support yourself too. So I'm someone who chronically dieted her whole life. I always believed that the more I restricted food, the happier I would be with my body because that's what diet culture preaches to us. So I basically developed a fear of food and had a really unhealthy relationship with food, and was chronically calorie counting and restricting, and MyFitnessPal was basically my best friend. And I also over exercised all the time. I exercised for, at some points in my life, 2-3 hours a day. I was actually a fitness instructor for many years of my life. And I always had this mentality that more is more is better. Exercise more because that's what's going to make me love my body more. So everything was driven by a very strong sense of unworthiness and never enoughness in my body. And I've shared this many times before in other videos, but I also went to the lengths of getting plastic surgery when I was in my 20s because I was unhappy with my body, thinking that that was going to fix everything. And it didn't, because I was always chasing something outside of myself. I was always seeking to fix an external problem to feel better on the inside. And these efforts of restricting chronically and dieting and over exercising totally burnt my body out. And I put on 15 to 20 pounds of weight. And I will show you the photo. This is my body from the weight gain, and you can see it's really centralized around my midsection. I am super inflamed. I'm super puffy. I was incredibly miserable. Not only did I gain weight as the side effect, but I also had suffered from insomnia. I was always really wired at night. I couldn't sleep, which is a key sign of cortisol disruption, inverse cortisol. And I had no appetite. So it was really bizarre. I had no appetite, but I chronically felt like I should be eating because that's what everyone told me I needed to do to heal myself. So I would force myself to eat regular meals, but I had no appetite because my metabolism was completely out of whack from all of the stress that I put on my body. And despite going to doctors, different naturopathic doctors eventually, and functional medicine doctors, because my regular doctors couldn't find anything wrong on my hormone panels, it seemed like no one could tell me what was actually going on until I finally learned about my nervous system. So let's get into this. If you are someone who is really struggling with your weight and you have a clean diet and you're doing all the things, which is what I was doing, and you still feel like your weight isn't budging, it's likely because you have issues with your cortisol, which is what no one ever teaches us. So I'm going to bring up a graph of the nervous system, and this is going to blow your mind. So when our nervous system is in a state of stress, which for most of us, frankly, it always is, what we can see here is that there's 3 different states our nervous system can be in. We have the social engagement, the sympathetic, and the dorsal vagal. What happens is we want to be living most of our lives, spending the majority of it in the ventral vagal, but obviously toggling between the others because we're human beings and we actually do need to get into our sympathetic nervous system state in order to survive. Like exercise requires us to get into sympathetic activation. Now, what happens is that if you're someone like me who was chronically over exercising and under eating, I'm putting my body into this sympathetic state over and over and over again. And if I zoom in on this, what you can see is what happens when you're in the sympathetic nervous system. It decreases insulin activity, digestion, salivation, relational ability, immune response, fuel storage. It increases blood pressure, heart rate, fuel availability, adrenaline, oxygen circulation to vital organs, blood clotting. A lot of bad things happen when we're chronically in the sympathetic. And this is exactly what happened to me. I was pumping cortisol through my body so much from this under eating and over exercising thing that my body just started to shut down, and I lost the ability to properly digest food. My adrenaline was through the roof, which causes us to store fat, and particularly visceral fat, so the fat around our organs. And that's why oftentimes you see it really around the midsection. And that is exactly why changing your diet isn't going to actually change your nervous system state out of the sympathetic. You can do things in a healthy way to adjust your diet. So obviously discontinuing any type of restriction and eating regular meals and all that, clean foods. But that wasn't really enough for me. I wasn't seeing any changes to my weight. What I actually had to do was I actually had to learn how to lower my cortisol levels by changing my nervous system state internally. This wasn't an external problem. And so I really learned how to regulate my dysregulated nervous system. When we're chronically in fight or flight, our body is going to hold on to weight, it's going to decrease muscle mass, and it's going to feel very difficult to lose weight. So it's going to take time. So the main practices that I did, which got my body from this here to this here, I will show you. Very big difference. This did not come from dieting. This came from regulating my nervous system. I stopped counting calories. I stopped dieting altogether. The only macro I focused on was hitting my daily protein intake, which is about 1 gram per pound. Or sorry, 1 gram of protein per body weight pound. And that kind of maxes out at around 150 grams. Research has shown that it doesn't really matter so much once you hit the kind of, I think it's 150 gram to 175 gram threshold. But essentially, in order to maintain lean muscle mass, we need protein, and lean muscle mass is what helps our metabolism run better, more effectively. And so to boost my metabolism, I focused on hitting that daily protein intake of good quality sources of protein. I wasn't sitting down eating 10 protein shakes a day. I tried to get it from whole foods mainly. And I focused on all of that internal stuff that nobody teaches us: how to regulate our nervous system, how to get better sleep. Yes, I went to a naturopathic doctor and a functional doctor who would recommend, some natural sleep supplements, for example, or different supplements that included all herbs. But frankly, I didn't find that those really made a huge difference. I took them for months and I just found like I'm not seeing any difference. And so it was me banging my head up against the wall and finally learning that I had done all this damage to my nervous system, and a dysregulated nervous system causes us to put on weight. And so the key for me was, it wasn't just about losing weight. It was about me wanting to actually take my life back. And so learning how to regulate my nervous system changed every single part of my life. And here's exactly how I did that. So I used the tool called tapping, otherwise known as EFT, emotional freedom techniques. And this technique involves 42 different modalities put together. It was originally created by an engineer to solve for post-traumatic stress disorder, war veterans, people working on bridges, all kinds of really high stressful environments. It's an exposure technique, which means that by focusing on whatever is upsetting us, whether it be weight gain, whether it be shame about our body, whether it be stress about work, by giving voice to what we're afraid of while using this technique, we actually calm the brain, we calm the amygdala, we support the body to shift out of our stress response. And so what happens is that those things that are originally causing you distress, we reprogram the brain around them and we regulate the nervous system. So I learned how to use this technique. I would focus on the fact that my body really upset me. My body image was really bad. I would focus on basically every single subject of my life that was upsetting me, and I reprogrammed my mind around it so that I could bring myself into a state of acceptance and peace. People very often confuse acceptance and peace, thinking that if I have acceptance and peace for my body, it means that I'm giving up and that I don't have any kind of motivation. That's totally untrue. If we go back to the nervous system graph, if you're feeling miserable about yourself and like a piece of crap, you are activating that sympathetic response, the fight or flight response. There's very little energy in that sympathetic response to actually take action. In fact, we often shut down one of the main lobes of the brain that are responsible in problem solving and taking action when we are chronically in stress. So I really learned, okay, I'm going to focus on bringing myself into a state of acceptance and compassion. And the result of that was so much more energy to actually take care of myself, which made the choices very simple in how to move forward. So I'm going to show you something else. So this is a graph that really shows you The different states that our nervous system is in, like I showed you, sympathetic, dorsal is the complete shutdown. So that's what happens when we get into so much stress that our body actually just shuts down and goes into freeze. And it also shows you the ventral vagal state, which is where ideally we want to spend most of our time. So you can see that when we're in a state of fear and anxiety, for example, the vibrational scale of that is 100, whereas peace, appreciation, 600. And that represents truly the vibration behind something, the power of that emotion. So I really supported myself to over and over focus on all those things that was upsetting me, using that tapping tool and transforming my circumstances. And by using that tapping tool and regulating my body over and over again, and I would devote half an hour a day at least to this, sometimes an hour, and I did it for months. And the result was not only did I get my sleep back, my appetite back, I healed my metabolism, I supported my body to naturally lose weight, and I developed a healthy relationship with food. I healed all of my fears of eating certain food groups. I healed my fears of eating regular meals. I had so much fear around food, and that fear was keeping me stuck and paralyzed in a prison. And once I did this work to heal internally all those negative thoughts that was going on, my body just lost weight because I was no longer shouldering all of that emotional pain that I had been lugging around for most of my life. And that was the irony. It's like I chased my whole life this dream of changing my body to feel better internally and to finally feel worthy. And that never led me anywhere. And it wasn't until I actually did the internal work of healing all those negative thoughts that I had about my body that I was actually able to see the freedom and the confidence that I had always wanted. And the best part is it didn't require me changing my body to feel that way. I started feeling that love and acceptance for myself exactly as I was. And that is what led to me inevitably losing weight because I stopped fighting myself. And this is the same reason why so many people will go on the journey of focusing on weight loss and making that their only goal. And when we do that, we basically tell ourselves we're not worthy as we are, and we cannot have acceptance for ourselves until we reach that weight loss goal, which inevitably blocks that weight loss goal entirely because you're so full of stress and pressure to get there. And furthermore, when you get there, it's still not enough because then you're worrying about, how do I keep this weight off? What happens if it changes? And those negative thoughts that we've always had about ourselves are still present when we lose the weight because you've done nothing to actually heal and rewire them. This is a default network in your nervous system. It's a neural pathway that has been firing over and over again that says, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I don't like my body, I've got to change this, I got to change that. And it's not your fault. It's something that we're trained to have by diet culture, media, our society, beauty standards, all of it. And so unless we actually work on healing those internal thoughts and gaining our power back, we're never going to feel better about ourselves. No external changes are ever going to matter. And that's exactly what I learned. So through regulating my nervous system, focusing on using EFT as a tapping tool every single day, I worked with a specialist on this. I did not do this all on my own. I learned how to become a practitioner myself, which is what I specialize in now. I specialize in supporting women who struggle with their relationship to their body image and food, and I help them transform those internal issues so that they can be free, confident, and live the lives that they deserve. So that is what I do now because I've come through this on my own and I know what it's like to battle this your whole life. And the other thing that I did all the time, every single day, 5-10 minutes a day minimum, is nervous system regulation tools, body-based somatic tools to clear stress, because this is not a cognitive thing that you can just talk your way through. When your body is internally stuck in that stress response and your nervous system is stuck in the sympathetic or freeze response, you have to teach it internally how to free itself of all of that stress. And those body-based tools like havening, orienting, eye gazing, there's so many different tools. I have another video on my page called 5 Ways to Regulate Your Nervous System, where you can actually go through each of those tools with me. Nervous system regulation tools are essential to our quality of life. We are constantly bombarded with stress, and you need to teach your nervous system how to become resilient to stress, how to tone your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that actually shifts us into our rest and digest system. All of this is essential. And bottom line, if you're struggling with weight, you're not going to lose weight if your nervous system is chronically in a state of stress, which is very easy when you're dieting, when you're always stressed about exercise. There's so much more that goes into this. And the last thing I will say is that if you are a woman, you have a menstrual cycle, and you're not cycle syncing your workouts, that is another form of stress. I will share another video on this, but aligning my workouts to the different phases of my cycle was also essential for lowering my cortisol levels. I was someone who was exercising, doing high intensity interval training in my menstrual days because I was that sick about my workouts and my relationship to my body. I didn't care that my body needed rest. I was like, if I don't do this workout, I'm going to gain weight. And I felt so guilty if I didn't push myself to the extreme. Well, that pushing is exactly what led my body to gain weight. And when I finally eased off, I worked with my body. I did all of this work to fix what was going on internally. My body lost the weight. My body has never looked like it does now. And I am in no way communicating that I'm a more valuable person because I'm in a thinner body today than I was before. But the truth of the matter is I was not well. My body had so many side effects as a result of that weight gain from the cortisol that now I'm in a state of peace. I don't have any of those issues anymore. I don't fight with my body anymore. I love and accept myself as a person, no matter what shape or size my body is in, no matter if I fluctuate. And I was able to naturally lose the weight while having a very healthy relationship with my body and exercise and food. I've never eaten more in my life. I've never exercised less in my life, which is actually a very healthy thing for someone that used to over-exercise. And I've never felt more peace and ease about life and anything life throws at me. These effects have all also navigated themselves into different areas of my life. I used to have really terrible romantic relationships. That doesn't happen anymore. I'm now married to the love of my life. It's a very safe, healthy, loving relationship. And that didn't happen when I was constantly fighting my body and having all these really unhealthy and negative thoughts about myself. When we feel negatively inside, it permeates into all areas of our lives. So doing this internal work changed my romantic relationships. It changed my relationship to finances. I've never been more abundant. It's changed my relationship to travel and friends and being able to go out and do things. I never wanted to leave the house when I was struggling with everything that I was. It completely took over my life. So if this is happening to you and you're really struggling, know that there's support out there for you. And that I know that if you focus on healing this the right way internally, you're going to live the most abundant, happy, joyful, confident life that you ever thought. So I hope this was useful for you. And if you have any questions or you want me to do a part 2, I would love to. I'm also over on TikTok. You can check out shorter videos from me there. And remember that I'm always here for you. So if you resonate with my story, me as a practitioner, you'd love to learn more, you're ready to take your life back, you can book a complimentary call with me anytime, and I will see you again next week.